Chris Demm just corrected me on something. We have a colleague and dear friend. He's younger than us, and his name is Squidward. He works down the hall, and he's got long hair. I mean, Chris Demm was just telling me now he's putting it up in a ponytail.
Well, he used to just kind of wear it loose.
You know?
But I've noticed, at least over the past maybe week or so, that he's pulling it back into sort of, a smallish ponytail.
And I thought for a while he was growing it out to give it to Locks of Love, but it turns out he's not.
Because I think if he were doing that, then it would be much longer.
Agreed. He's cut it and kept it at that length. Now, I think it looks terrible. And so he used to have a buzz cut, and I thought he looked much better at that time. And he's in his mid-20s. So I just took him aside a few days ago, and I said, listen, Squid, I don't mean to get into your business, but I think you'd find a young lady friend if you would cut your hair shorter. I think it looks a lot better. And he said to me, I don't mean to say anything untoward, but I'm drowning in poon as it is.
Yeah. You could not have been more wrong.
I'm going to have to cut this meeting short. There's a woman who says that she's going to the gym. That's where her husband thinks he is.
Yeah. It's a limited window.
Very limited window.
And so I said, well, take it for what it's worth. But I believe in short hair.
Just my 2 cents.
It's my 2 cents. I believe in a clean-cut look and short hair, and I thought you were much more ruggedly handsome when you had short hair. And he said, well, I appreciate that, but I am due at noon to satisfy a married woman.
Yeah.
One of many.
I said, great talk. Great talk. I try to help young people.
1950s Kelly.
I'm living
He's
in the
back.
I'm living in the Leave
It's
It to
your
Beaver world.
hair that's the problem.
Long hair,
I
hippie.
literally can't keep girls out of my lap.
Even in the 50s.
Hair.
I said, your hair. You want a clean cut look, a buzz cut, if you will, which he used to have, but he's let himself go.
Was it the COVID that started that? When he let his hair go?
That was when, he was drowning in poon during COVID.
Well, that's true, too.
His girlfriend, they both had COVID together, said, well, let's stay in and have Chinese food. It wasn't his girlfriend.
It was just a hookup.
Oh, just a hookup that happened to be over.
Yeah, and they were like, well, now that we both have COVID, let's just keep hooking up for the week.
Okay.
And eat Chinese food every day.
That's right. He told me it was Chinese food and sex for the whole week while he was.
He's doing all right.
I try to help him. I try to guide him, in different directions and so forth. It is what it is. I'll keep giving advice, and they'll take it or they won't take it, whatever you do there, This is a segment really all about people who are upset. I understand why this woman is really upset. She's from Florida, and she has one of those doorbell cameras that a lot of people have now where, of course, you can see what's going on your front porch. She wasn't even home, and she was had some folks come to evict her from her house. She had an eviction notice, and they came to the house to get rid of her and say, okay, now's the time. You have to get out. We've already told you. You have to go. It turns out this is the Pasco Police Department that came up on her porch. It was her neighbor that was being evicted. So when she got wind that they were on her porch and she wasn't even home.
Classic mix-up.
Classic mix-up.
Well, how do you evict someone when they're not home?
Well, they would
change the locks?
They knocked on the door, and yes, they were
throw your
changing
stuff
the
out on
locks.
the lawn.
That's right. They were taking their stuff.
Yeah.
And they were in the process of doing that, and she saw them and went on and said, what's going on?
Hello? Hello? What are you doing?
We're here to finalize the eviction.
What eviction?
It was posted last week.
On my house?
Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
My name is Jennifer, and that is my house.
Oh, damn it.
I am caught up on my phone. Nobody has served me an eviction notice.
Yeah, I think it's 4-3. Huh?
What the hell is going on?
We're going to have to fix their lock, change the lock.
Hey, we do apologize. We have the wrong house. It's the next door neighbors.
All right. You heard it when it dawned on him.
How far had they gotten in the process, Kelly?
Pretty far. They had busted up the locks and opened the door and were getting ready to enter. And that's when she came on and said, what's going on? And she was concerned because her dogs were in the house.
That was my next question. I mean, if you're evicting someone and they're not there,
that's right.
What do you do with the animals?
Well, they said
they bring along cages.
They were able to refix the door, close it. She came home, and they did pay for new locks for her. So she wasn't all that upset. But of course, they had already messed up, so she got.
Now, was that it? Did deputies do that?
This was the Pasco two officers from Pasco Police Department, and they did buy her a barbecue lunch as well.
All right.
I didn't know they did that. I mean, I knew that, like, sheriffs, brought you warrants and stuff like that. But I didn't know that they actually did the locks. I thought a company or the landlord would do that.
We saw years ago. There's that movie with Roger.
The
and
old
Me.
Michael Moore movie,
Michael Moore
Roger
movie.
and Me. There's a guy who evicts people for a living.
And was he a policeman? I think he was.
Maybe he
had a
was
badge.
retired cop, but he did have a badge.
He did,
thought.
yeah, he did.
He didn't like his job, but it was his job.
But he had to do it. He's like, somebody's got to do this. I don't like being the bad guy, but somebody's got to do it. Well, you heard it dawn on the police officer. He looked at the address and went,
You can't make a mistake like that.
oh, boy.
Do you think the neighbor who was supposed to be evicted is watching this going, oh, hell, she ain't paying her rent either. This is great.
Yeah.
Probably so, yeah. She was pretty upset. There's another neighbor dispute.
Did they
now.
get the right person?
Yeah, they eventually went over. They had to go, we'll go next door. We just use these locks here next door and go over there. They did. They got the right person out. And she has forgiven the police after that barbecue sandwich that she got for lunch and the changing of the locks and then paying for everything. She said, all right, mistakes happen. But she did have to come home from work. And, she had to take care of her dogs.
Yeah.
So did they misread the paperwork? It sounds like because they had, like you could hear one of the male voices say it's 43.
That's right. They were at 45. They were one house down.
One down too many.
One down too many.
As a guy who used to deliver prescriptions for the Sunset Hills Pharmacy in Richmond, Virginia, house numbers are very important.
Very.
Very.
And
it's sometimes they're hard to find. I find them harder to spot in Biggie's Delivered Pizza.
Yeah, I was going to say, the worst was when somebody didn't have a number on the mailbox or a number on the house. And you had to, I don't even think people could do it now. Back then, before GPS, you almost had to do math. You're like, it's 1708,
Right.
1706. Okay, that's got to be it.
right. Yeah, that's true.
Your best guess.
Does make it a lot easier now with the GPS.
It's not perfect, but yeah.
My son's always like, what did you guys do in olden times? Which I hate that term. I think he knows. He winds me up like that. He's like, what did y'all do in olden times when you had to go to a place you didn't know where it was? And I said, well, we wrote down.
We'd scribble out directions line by line.
Drive 2 miles, take a left at the Dairy Queen.
Yep.
And he goes, oh, my God, that's awful. That's terrible.
Yeah, you don't remember having to look for landmarks. And
I
of course,
know.
the old joke was, you go by where the old A&P was.
Yeah.
Turn there. But that's right, there's no A&P there now.
No, of course not. Go to the closed down, burnt out A&P and then turn right there. There's another neighbor dispute now in Montreal. A woman named Ayana Massa says that she's upset because her children, we'll see where you fall on this. They were selling lemonade. Now her kids are 6 and 8, and they were selling lemonade from a lemonade stand they built in front of their house.
Right on.
Taylor's oldest time.
That's what they do.
My daughter's done
See it every summer.
Summertime, and see it now, Well, they had a megaphone. And when people were going by there and say, lemonade, and they were yelling out, well, their neighbor got very upset with this because it was bothering him. Older guy, and he's like, I'm tired of yelling because it's been going on for a few days now. They've done the lemonade stand for a few times. And so he called the police on them. First, he went over and said, I want this to stop. I want you to stop yelling on the loudspeaker, on the megaphone. And the mom said, well, this is ridiculous. These are children.
He said, you little mother effers, I'm going to shut you down. So I told him to get the hell off my property. And he said, I'm calling the police.
He did call the police.
Yeah.
And the police took his side and said that this was noise pollution and that they couldn't use the loudspeaker.
I tell him, look, officer, give me a fine. I'll pay the fine. He said, oh, I'm not giving you a fine. You think that because you're in a wheelchair, you're above the law? The guy had his hand on his holster, telling me that I'm aggressive. And I told him to get off my property. He refused. Well, it ended with this sergeant telling me my kids are not allowed to have their megaphone and that they don't want to have to come back here and arrest me.
So they got rid of the megaphone.
Did they run it over with their squad car?
They did, yeah. You have to.
Back it up there. Give it one more try there.
We don't want him to go back using it again.
Of course not. She was in a wheelchair. And the cop said, oh, you think because you're in a wheelchair we're going to take pity on you? No, we're going to go hard on your kids. I was a little bit surprised by that,
Yeah, the megaphone's a bit much, though.
Yeah, I mean, and he did not call the police first. And the neighbor, now, if he used language, that's a little...
The MFer thing, do you have to with the effing? You don't have to say
But, the kids in our neighborhood, they just holler.
Well, that's the thing. What's the difference between, I guess, the megaphone? I don't know.
Does.
Because kids go out and play and scream all the time.
Yeah. But I guess the megaphone was bothering him. He could hear it inside the house, he said. Yeah. So, but I was a bit surprised. I mean, these are children. I know. They're still allowed to have their lemonade stand, but they cannot have the megaphone out like that. And that's Canada on Canada. You know, you rarely see that kind of thing in Canada. Speaking of wheelchairs now, this will surprise you also. And there's something going on TikTok now, and a spokesperson is speaking out about it from the airports. A TikToker has started to say, if you're looking for ways to make summer travel easier, fake an injury, sit in a wheelchair to skip the lines at airports. And this is going viral on TikTok. So a lot of people now, they think able-bodied people are getting into wheelchairs and going through the airport.
How does one get the use of one of the airport chairs?
That's my question, too.
You know, because they keep plenty of them there, and you certainly see plenty of airport attendants pushing passengers through the terminal.
Could you just go and say, I have a terrible leg injury or a back injury?
I don't think they check.
I don't either. And you just sit down in the wheelchair. This is a spokesperson from Logan.
We have more demand than we had before the pandemic. Some of this is because people are using the wheelchair support to try to get fast track through the airport. That is absolutely the wrong thing to be doing. And if you go on TikTok, you'll see that is one of the travel hacks that people are recommending.
It's awful. It's awful to do something like that.
I don't know if you can tell the sky cap out front if they're back out there, or go to the. Well, I mean, sometimes the airline will do it.
Leave it to Beaver.
Why can't you tell the sky cap?
The sky cap. Is there anything wrong with that?
Nothing.
Tell the sky cap you're flying the friendly skies and you'd like to be moved through in a wheelchair.
Just a moment, sir.
That is low. That is low. That is pretending to be hurt or pretending to have be paralyzed or whatever.
I don't know how you get one. They have an information desk usually at most.
I think if you just tell them you need one, I don't think that they verify. Yeah. There's nothing on if your license that says you've got a broken hip.
But do you tell the airline, or who do you tell to get the wheelchair?
It doesn't seem to be a problem. These airport folks are saying, they're just sitting in wheelchair. I mean, I think you go in and say, I need a wheelchair, and they give it to you. You know, it seems like it anyway.
If you recall, pre-pandemic, 3-4 years ago, there was a similar issue at Disney World.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Where people were bringing grandma for no good reason.
That's right.
Other than the fact that she was in a wheelchair and got to cut the line.
Yeah.
Or they'd put her in a wheelchair or a kind of like a cart and say, well, so they figured out 10 of us can cut the line as long as we have Meemaw.
That's exactly right. That is so true.
I think the park tried to change the rules, right?
They did change the rules and people got pissed. They said, by the way, we basically made it wider so the wheelchairs can go through the lines now, so you don't get to cut in line anymore.
That's a fact.
Okay.
That's exactly what they did, and people really got upset by that. They would pay for a ticket for Meemaw because it was worth it to get to the front of the line that way, And, there was a time where we sat and considered very carefully.
Well, and then after that, now Biggie bringing that up is bringing back memories, because then people would pretend to be like your long-lost cousin in a wheelchair and rent themselves to you.
You'd be yes, you'd go online and they'd pay you to do that.
You'd sit in the wheelchair all day and pretend to be a cousin.
Yeah.
This is not Leave It to Beaver.
No,
you didn't. No. You didn't do that in Leave It to Beaver.
I saw this kind of in action at Disney pre-pandemic when they had first opened a new part of their world. It was the Avatar world. And that's
a 4 or 5 hour line.
Yes. And
it is. It's 4.5 hour line.
It's a movie.
It is. It's true.
Well, what I saw was some people of size, like myself. They were in to carts, though, and they were riding through, and they tried to go to the front of the line, and the people at the new Avatar world said, your carts now fit through here.
Do you mean golf cart? Or are you talking like the little Rascals?
Rascals.
Yes. Like a scooter.
Yeah, like a little scooter.
They've widened the
They
area.
were so wide, they said, no, you don't get to skip the line here. Here you wait in line with everybody else. And they protest. I can't wait in that line.
You hover around to the back.
And they did. They sent them right to the back of the line. And they had to... I mean, it was wide enough but it was hard watching them angle through because we were behind them. Yeah.
They are, but this particular ride, it's wide, Chris, it winds around forever. And that line takes 4 hours.
My God, man.
And they list it at 4 hours. Now, I have
other people in line right now.
Yeah,
waiting, who will ride it at lunchtime.
In fact, that particular ride, we rode it 4 or 5 times. We had fast passes for it a couple of times, and then you get there for your magic hours at like dawn, and everybody, as soon as the gates open, you run. I had to get my wife. I was like, "You better put your
run,
run!" You run, and still it's an hour wait. And by the time you're in line, I mean, you get there early. It's an hour wait, and you're in line, and you see the sign. Wait time 4 hours. It's incredible. And Jesus. I'll tell you what I saw. This is about a customer of size now.
You're pointing at Biggie.
I just gave a story of a customer size without pointing at anyone. Why can't you do the same?
I do apologize.
It's reflexive.
I wanted you to hear this, though. I want you to know this.
I'm well aware of it. I'm a customer of size.
Open up your large ears and listen.
I want you to be particularly aware of this.
This is why you're not my best friend.
I want you to pay attention to this now.
This is why you didn't get the dog party invite.
This is why I don't answer your texts.
People in Leave It to Beaver don't talk like this. Well, Eddie Haskell did.
Actually, I think, yeah.
They did kind of wind up Larry Mondello.
Yeah.
He was a chunk.
Lumpy.
Lumpy.
Look at Lumpy Rutherford.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
I'm in the Avatar ride, and you have to sit in a seat. It's almost like being on a bicycle or whatever. And the guy tries to get in the seat, and they try to lock him in and everything, and they say, "Sir, I'm sorry, you're too large for this ride." And he had been in line for...
You gotten to that point?
Oh, yeah, he was in the seat. And he said, "I've been standing in line for 3.5 hours." And they said, "Sir, I'm sorry, we cannot..."
That's his fault.
Safely... Is it his fault?
It is his fault.
It's his first time on the ride.
No, but they have most places. I don't
I'm
know.
surprised
if this
to
one
hear
does.
you in particular say that.
Well,
these are your people.
Well, I don't pretend like a lot of people do to not be a customer of size.
He was a customer of size.
And a lot of places, and maybe you just didn't see it, now have the seats outside of the ride.
Right.
Well, that's
and
what
they're
I was
like,
asking.
sit down.
True.
Yeah,
That's
A
true.
test seat.
I mean,
And if
you've seen height of requirements, so that's easy.
If he didn't test seat it,
Well,
and he tried to climb on there, I mean, that's his fault.
I told you what happened to me in Pigeon Forge. We're at Dollywood, and I didn't see the sign. It said, "Those taller than 6'5" can't ride this ride. You'll lose your feet." Mm-hmm. And I didn't see the sign, and my daughter said, "You may be too tall for this." I said, "What are you talking about? You don't know anything. You're 13 years old." Mm-hmm. And we get up there, and the guy said, "You're too tall for this ride." And I said, "What?" And he goes back up to that post.
But I hunch.
I said, "I hunch like crazy."
I slouch.
He said, "Back up against the dolly." They have a dolly.
A 7-foot dolly
Have a
part.
7-foot dolly, and if you clear her teats,
Sorry, fella.
you're out. You're above the nipples. You're out. And I said, "What if I just want to ride it?" He goes, "You'll lose your feet at the ankles."
You want to see that?
I said, "You want to keep your
Dolly
feet?"
designed it herself.
She doesn't like feet.
She really hates the tall.
Telling you. Tracy, you're talking about wheelchairs now, going to the front of the line, or in this case, what's happening now is you're breaking in line at airports. You're pretending to need a wheelchair. Go ahead, Tracy.
Hey, good morning. P1 here in Charlotte.
Thank you.
Yeah, big losers to those who actually do that and don't need it. But the way that you can actually do that in advance, I sprained an ankle once and had to get a flight. So when you book your ticket, you actually can select on the website if you're going to need wheelchair assistance. And I think that that's how they kind of arrange to allocate how many they're going to need in a given gate area and things like that in advance. So that's how people do it.
But if you just say,
sense.
"I sprained my ankle," you could walk in there with a little bit
Morning
of
of.
Yeah, with a bit. You could even say it on. Well, you could say it on your ticket. "I'm going to need a wheelchair," and you could walk in and be limping and have it.
Sure.
Thank you, Tracy. Terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do.
Yeah.
It's an awful, awful thing to do. Didn't happen. And Leave It to Beaver.
Not in the olden days.
You just don't.
Not in Mayfield.
That's exactly right. Oh, I miss those days, don't you, Dave?
Back in the old days, they just shoved us fat people down a hill. We disappeared.
Well, we didn't have the weight problems back then.
Didn't have fat people back then.
Yeah.
We had tobacco.
I think the food was more wholesome, and yes, we smoked our way to better
Lots
health.
of tobacco, lots of bourbon, and Scotch whiskey.
I really wanted. This was
Definitely a better time.
This was a great segment for you to be here for. I'm so glad you were here for this.
I'm here every day. I get paid to be here. I think I'm here by choice.